This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Trick-or-treaters! I will take care of them myself! Time to abandon your treats!
Okay, R2, we'll go over this one more time. Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat. No, it still doesn't make any sense. Why would anybody want to smell feet? Oh, hello, I am C-3PO, and this is my counterpart, R2d2. We are here once again at Skywalking through Neverland to bring you yet further Halloween safety advice. Today we will look at trick-or-treating. Personally, I would go for an oil bath. That does seem quite a treat. A parent or responsible adult should always accompany younglings on their neighbourhood rounds. If your older younglings are travelling alone, plan and review a route which is acceptable to you and agree on a specific time when they should return. Remain on well-lit streets and always use a sidewalk. If no sidewalk is available, walk or roll at the far edge of the roadway facing oncoming traffic. Only cross the street as a group and on established crosswalks. Never cross between parked cars, speeders, transports, or at driveways. Only go to homes with a porch light on, and never enter a home, car, or speeder for a treat. It could be a trick.
It's a trap!
Because pedestrian injuries are most common to younglings on Halloween, remind trick-or-treaters to stay in a group and communicate where they will be going. Always carry a comlink, or as they are called here, a cell phone, for quick communication. R2, can you think of anything else? Then that should about cover it. We do sincerely hope our Halloween safety advice has been helpful. It was brought to you from Skywalking through Neverland and the American Academy of Pediatrics. We here at Skywalking through Neverland would be honoured to hear all about your Halloween stories. Please send us your blogs and or pictures to share at skywalkingthrough-neverland.com, facebook.com/skywalkingthrough-neverland, or tweet them at skywalkingpod. So, do take good care of yourselves, and remember, never land on Alderaan, even if they do have the best candy. I knew we should have loaded up when we had the chance.
Are you ready?
Off to Neverland!
Here we go!
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
When I first made Star Wars, everybody in Hollywood said, well, this is a movie Disney should have made.
You're more than just fans. You're family.
Best day ever!
Secrets love.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
Hey.
When you use a bird to write with, it's called tweeting.
When we visit the world of Disney, we never grow old. It's a Peter Pan, Never land that keeps us young in heart.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you are skywalking through Neverland. I have a good feeling about this.
Happy Halloween, Skywalkers! We've been waiting all year for this one episode, or in my case, I've been waiting 40 years for this one episode. But before we tell you what's coming up, we want to welcome you all to Skywalking Through Neverland. We are your podcast destination for the many decades of Star Wars and Disney fandom. I am Richard Woloski, and now everyone please say hello to my Scream Queen, sweetie wife, Sarah. I couldn't think of anything else Halloween.
It just came out.
Yeah. not one of my best ones.
All right. Well, we want to welcome our Star Wars and Disney family. If you are listening to the show, thank you so much. And we want to give you a big Wookiee hug. To all of you Skywalkers out there who listen to the show every week, the SkyTubers and the Facehuggers who are watching our live stream right now on Facebook only right now. YouTube was being weird. And also everyone who tweets at us at Skywalking Pod. We love that when you share a hashtag Skywalker selfie of whatever you're doing while you're listening. It's pretty fun. We've had some great Skywalker selfies.
Yeah, especially, did you see the one from Brian Sims?
I did, but we're going to go into that a little later in the episode.
He looked horrific, so I thought it was a good time to bring it up.
Oh, yes. Well, we'll get into it later.
Speaking of horrific, what would you say is your number one Halloween memory from age 1 to your age 30-something?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, we got married during Halloween, so...
That's right.
Does that count?
Speaking of our getting married around Halloween, tomorrow will be our 8th year anniversary.
That's right. 8 years of our marriage anniversary, not our podcast anniversary.
Right.
We have to specify now.
Get so many anniversaries.
I know.
But we'll say, if you take the wedding off the table.
Okay.
Where do you go from there?
That's so hard, sweetie. Well, I'm gonna go back in time to as a kid, and I'm gonna say, you mean my favorite Halloween costume? Well, my favorite Halloween costume.
You've been watching too much Zootopia lately.
Yes, I have. Was when I was 7 years old, I went to my first communion. So I had this white dress, and I was totally into Mary Poppins, and I wanted to be Mary Poppins for Halloween, but I did not want to be Mary Poppins when she arrives in her black coat or blue coat, whatever it is. I wanted to be Jolly Holiday Mary Poppins in the white dress with the red cummerbund and the pretty white hat with the white frothy stuff, and that's what I wanted to be. And so my mom made my communion dress into the Mary Poppins dress. So she made the white and red cummerbund that went around. We found a hat and we put on the tulle to make it the Mary Poppins hat, and I was the happiest 7-year-old ever.
Okay.
Okay, what about you? What's your favorite Halloween memory / costume / yes?
I loved haunted houses when I was a kid. Loved them. I would get freaked out by them, but I really loved going to haunted houses. And one, when you just asked me that question, one that really stuck out was one we had at the local church, where you would go in and you would do the old-fashioned thing of sticking your hand in spaghetti or grapes, and oh, it's brains, oh, it's eyeballs, and there was a witch there stirring her big cauldron, and I was wearing my Darth Vader costume, just like I'm wearing almost right now, and she said to me, "Take off your mask." Oh, I was livid. Because as an 8-year-old, when I put this Darth Vader costume on, I felt like I was Darth Vader. But now here she was blowing my cover, and she was saying, "Take off your mask." I wanted her to think I was Darth Vader. I don't take off my mask for nobody. But I just recall and I wouldn't do it. Oh. Yeah, because I wasn't Richard Wolosky.
Right.
I was Darth Vader sitting there. And I would just look at her like, nope, not coming off. And I recall this woman getting really upset with me because I wouldn't take it off.
Oh, but it made sense to you, so you know what?
It did.
It works.
It's like, hey, I'm Darth Vader. Deal with it.
Yeah.
So just when you had asked me that was the first thing that popped in my mind. And I've been to a lot of haunted houses. And in the late 70s, a lot of them were starting to represent Star Wars. And it was so great mixing my favorite holiday, Halloween, with Star Wars. It's like a Reese's peanut butter cup on steroids. And I loved it. And that's where my fascination for Jawas and Tusken Raiders come in, because at this Boston Museum haunted house, they would do every year, at the very end, there would be a Tusken Raider standing there, like, the statues.
Yeah.
When you walk by, they'd go, boom! One of those. It freaked me out. Because I thought, oh, this is a real Tusken Raider. But in my mind, this guy looked like a real Tusken Raider, and the fact that he just scared me like Luke, I'm putting it all together in my 8-year-old brain that this was a real Tusken Raider. Mm-hmm. And then there was a little diorama of 2 little Jawas. And it just all melded right then. And I think I told a story before where I went back the next week and I had brought them gifts. Mm-hmm. I brought my Topps Star Wars cards, and I get the Tusken Raider card, and I put the Jawa card by the Jawas. You know what? When I go somewhere, I bring gifts.
That's very cute. Aww.
So I would say that was my favorite Halloween moment. And anyone watching right now on Facebook, if you want to go ahead and post a short blurb about your favorite Halloween memory, we'll go ahead and read it as we're recording.
Yeah.
All right, now, speaking of recording, we are recording this from Long Beach, California on October 24th, our wedding eve, our wedding anniversary eve,
right?
2017. Now, Minnie, you know what's coming, Minnie. Minnie Mouse, you know what's coming. I'm going to ask you the time. What time is it, Minnie Mouse?
It's 12:55. Good afternoon.
You had that one ready, didn't you?
I did.
You read the show notes beforehand. It's catching on. Oh,
yes.
my cousin Mark Arsenal is now joining us on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Egging houses was always fun for us.
Uh-oh.
Oh, Mark. Oh, that's incriminating. That's what that is.
Oh, and look, Patty Hammond says, my mom made me a costume that was in the shape of a die. Like a die,
dice.
Like dice,
right? Half of a pair of dice.
Right. No one has a die. It's dice, right?
People trying to roll you all night? Was it a sabacc die? More details to come.
Yes.
All right, now, Sarah, how many more days until Halloween?
Well, there's only 7 more days until Halloween because it's in a week.
That's right.
All right, we have some Skywalkers weighing in on their favorite Halloween memories. And we have Elijah Potter. He says that his favorite is attempting to make a haunted house with my cousin when we were 7 and 8. Cool.
Do you have any pictures of that?
Attempting to make. I've taken it didn't work out as well as you wanted it to.
Did you ever make a haunted house when you were a kid?
I did not.
Oh, I did.
Yeah?
Failed miserably. They're a lot harder than you would think.
Yes, absolutely. All right, want to read Justin's?
Yeah, Justin Rockniak writes, on Halloween 1984, my parents made a life-size Darth Vader piñata filled with candy and Star Wars action figures for our party.
Wow.
I didn't get an invite in 1984 to your Halloween party. I would have loved that.
I know.
What a great mom.
That's amazing.
So Elijah Potter just replied back and said, sadly, his did not work out either.
Oh.
You know, you hang up sheets all along your house
with
like clothespins, and you think they're like strong as nails. As soon as one kid taps it, it all comes like dominoes. They all fall down.
Yep.
And Patty Nazarian says, I was She-Ra for Halloween when I was 6 years old and wore my costume all year long.
Way to go, Patty. Well, these are all of your awesome memories, and we just shared our memories, but now we're going to make one more Halloween memory on this episode.
Yes, we are, because, like I said earlier, we've been waiting 40 years for this. Well, I've been waiting 40 years to talk to these gentlemen who we're going to have on the show today, and that is Ira Cooper and Frank Romano from the Ben Cooper Halloween Costume Company.
Woohoo!
Oh, my goodness. Now, if you were a kid in the 1970s, 80s, or even as far back as the 60s, 50s, you wore a Ben Cooper costume. And these were the one-piece jumpsuits with the plastic masks with the elastic that goes around. And one of my greatest memories of trick-or-treating when I was a kid is wearing these costumes because it made me feel like these characters. Even though I knew Darth Vader didn't have a picture of himself on his chest, or Stormtrooper didn't have a picture of himself on his chest, I still felt like those characters.
That's awesome.
Now, making their podcast debut are these gentlemen who started the trend of cosplaying.
Yeah. And Heather Hunt says she'll never forget the smell of those costumes.
Oh, did you smell your stuff as well as I did? I used to love opening up anything, just getting that whiff of of the plastic and vinyl smell.
Wow.
Loved it.
Also, Jamie Burns is asking a good question. Do they sell them here in the UK? Did they sell them?
That is a good question. I'm sure they did, but I would have guessed they would have been Universal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know their factory, of course, was in like New York, right?
New York and China.
Okay.
So I'm wow. You know what? This weekend we're gonna go see Ira Cooper, who is the nephew of Ben Cooper. He's gonna be at an event here in Burbank, and I'm gonna ask him that.
Okay.
I would imagine they would have been. All right, and Frank Romano, the artist, he's the one who illustrated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of costumes. So now, are you asking, how did we ever get in contact with these two people? These two artists, these two Halloween legends? Well, last year, Skywalker, John Miller, reached out to us after he heard our discussion with Don Post Jr. Now, Don Post is the company that made the full-head Star Wars masks. And knowing how much we are huge Halloween fans and huge vintage Halloween fans, well, he reached out to us to see if we were interested in talking with the Ben Cooper guys.
Yep. or they're called Team Cooper,
Team
as they're
Cooper,
known.
right.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be fun to have John on to tell us about their journey and then getting them on the show.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yes.
Wow. Skywalkers helping Skywalkers.
All right. Also on this episode, back by popular demand, we have our Skywalking Through Neverland Halloween safety tips, courtesy of C-3PO and Simon Wilkie. We also have shout-outs, and because of Rob Dellinger's extremely busy schedule these days, the Skywalker of the Week will have to be renamed the Skywalker of every other week or month.
Yeah, Rob's got a new band, so he's really, really busy, and plus with the family, it's getting harder and harder for him to do the Skywalkers of the Week, but you know what? He's still going to do them. It's just going to be few and far between.
That's right.
All right. Oh, Jamie Burns just said that was a great episode, referring to the Don Post Jr. episode.
Yes.
One of my favorites. One of my favorites.
Oh, so awesome.
Yeah, tying in vintage Star Wars to vintage Halloween. Fun episode. And I'm equally as excited to talk to the Ben Cooper guys in just a few minutes. But right now, before we get into our discussion with Team Cooper, let's hear another safety tip from C-3PO about choosing the right Halloween costume.
Now, I'm sure 3PO conferred with Team Cooper on this one.
I'm sure he did too.
Who should I be this year? Mickey? Donald? Perhaps Goofy? Yes, R2, you are so right. Maybe something closer to home. Something like Iron Man. Oh, hello. I am C-3PO. And this is my counterpart, R2d2. We are here once again at Skywalking Through Neverland to bring you some more important Halloween safety advice. Today we will look at selecting an appropriate and safe costume. Firstly, plan a costume that is bright and reflective for greater visibility. Make sure your costume is short enough to prevent tripping, entanglement, or contact with flame. Please obtain a flashlight with fresh batteries to safely travel in the night. Glow sticks may also be an option. Because masks and helmets can limit or even block eyesight, just ask any of those dreaded Imperial stormtroopers. Consider non-toxic makeup and decorative hats as safer alternatives. Yes, R2, I'm sure they do them in your size. If a lightsaber, vibro axe, or electro staff is a part of your costume, make sure it is not too sharp or long. You may be easily hurt by these accessories if you stumble or happen to trip. You may even lose a hand. Poor Master Luke. Oh dear. Well, R2, I think that about covers everything. Join myself and R2 next week for some more Halloween safety advice brought to you from Skywalking Through Neverland and the American Academy of Pediatrics. We encourage all you Skywalkers to send us pictures of your costumes for all to enjoy. You can send them to share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com, facebook.com/skywalkingthroughneverland, or tweet them at skywalkingpod. Now R2 wants me to remind you about the most important safety tip of all. You stepped on my line. I was supposed to say, never land on Alderaan. You mindless philosopher, why I choose to degrade myself working with a glorified plumber is beyond my programming. I'll hear no more of it.
Toys R Us has the Big Bird Halloween costume and the Yoda Halloween costume for trick-or-treating.
There's costumes of TV favorites like Wonder Woman and the Hulk. There's popular characters from Star Wars. And there's superheroes like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, and many more at bare bones prices. $2.38 to $4.17. All at the favorite Halloween haunts. Woolworth and Woolco.
In the 1970s and 80s, cosplay was simply called dressing up. If you wanted to look like any of your favorite Disney or Star Wars characters for Halloween, you had to get a Ben Cooper costume.
Ben Cooper is as synonymous with Halloween as candy corn, trick-or-treating, and the Great Pumpkin. Here with us now is Ira Cooper, the nephew of Ben Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, certainly.
We're so glad to have you. And can you tell us what position you held at the Ben Cooper Company and a little of what you did there and when you started?
Mine began actually as a child. I did lots of stuff in the factory besides, once I was past the age of fooling around amongst the boxes, in the summers, I would help run a packing or a warehouse operation or, have various functions like that, which would last all summer because Dad, both Ben and Nat, believed that we didn't have summers off. When school ended, we went right to work.
And that's the way it should still be even today. Now, as a special bonus here on Skywalking Through Neverland, we also have the original costume artist, Mr. Frank Romano. Hey, Frank.
Yes.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us also, and I gotta say that your designs were such a huge part of my childhood. But tell us, what age did you start your costume illustrations at Ben Cooper Incorporated?
I started there in 1962.
Wow, okay.
What age were you then, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's see, I was 31, something like that.
Okay. All right. Now, Ira, your dad, let's go back into the Ben Cooper history here. Your dad started out designing costumes for the Cotton Club in New York and the Ziegfeld Follies going back to the 1920s and 30s. When did he start making Halloween costumes, and how did he transition into that?
Well, the way Nat described it, now remember, Nathan Cooper was my father. Ben Cooper was the actual founder, and so, you can see his name on the box. However, it was World War II, and Nat went off to war. Ben was married and had a deferment because Robert had been born, but Nat ended up in England for most of the war. So the company was making theater costumes, and Dad always described it as, it was a one costume at a time kind of business. And the question was, how do they get bigger? How do they handle it? Because Dad was fond of describing a trip out to Chicago because a actress had busted a seam, and so they had to take the train from New York to Chicago with a costume. So that was Federal Express in those days was you got on a train and you took it. So the concept was, what can we do? And at some point they had the idea that Mickey Mouse would make good dress up. And Ben was very, very aware of what it meant to dress up, to masquerade. And he saw Mickey as an opportunity. And so through a company that was already making more of children's items called the Iskin Company, they approached Disney for a wide range of characters.
Oh, wow. Now, was Mickey Mouse the very first character to be made into a Halloween costume?
Yes, and as far as I know, Ben Cooper had Mickey license number 1.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Wow, that's some history
I'm
there.
wondering how much that was.
I doubt it was much by today's dollars, but it was probably still a risk because at that time, they not only had to make enough Mickeys, they had to get into a factory that would be able to handle the volume, and you had to produce a Mickey Mouse in quite a different way than you produced a Cotton Club, garment.
Well, do you know what year that was when they got the Disney license and started producing Disney costumes?
Boy, we'd have to look through the archives, but it would be between 1944 and 1950.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that Halloween there were like Mickey Mouses everywhere. So if you lost your child, you weren't going to find them until November 1st.
Actually, yeah, there were entire theaters that would have Mickey dress-up days, and that's all you would see in the audience is that gauze. In those days, it was a gauze mask that had been formed on a mold, wet gauze and paint pushed onto a mold, and it was a pretty horrific scene to see a theater full of kids. At least the pictures I've seen. Everybody in a Mickey mask. There's something very, very surreal about it.
Oh, please tell me you have those pictures somewhere, please.
They do exist, these pictures.
Oh my gosh, we have to make it like our show art.
Yeah, exactly. How soon after that did they start making other Disney characters?
Well, pretty quick, because Disney was pioneering his own form of animation. And so it was pretty quick that they wanted to do Snow White, which I think was the second one.
Right.
Wow.
Now, Frank, how did you come into the Ben Cooper company?
I had my first art job was in a little screen place that did silk screening on loose leaves and wallets and stuff. And that they went bankrupt inside of 4 months. So I was still looking for another job. Ben Cooper was looking for someone. We were looking in the Times and looking for an artist. My wife and I, we wrote them a letter and answered it. And we didn't hear from them for quite a few months. Then all of a sudden, to make a living, I was doing floor covering. I did anything to support my family. Mm-hmm. So I was doing floor covering and anything else. And all of a sudden, Ben Cooper called my wife up and asked if I was still interested. And she said, yes. He got in touch with me, or I got in touch with him. And I went down. He told me to come and see him. I went down and saw him. And he asked me if I would paint him a picture of a devil using 4 colors. Since I knew a little about silk screening, that was the reason that I was able to get this interview. And I went home, and he told me to bring it back the next morning. I went home, and I worked till 5 o'clock in the morning painting this devil. I brought it in. He seemed to be very impressed with it. And he told me to go home and paint a clown. So I went home, and I worked till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I painted the clown. He said, fine. He said, you got the job, but I'll give you 2 weeks. And I started on a Monday, and he said, I'll give you 2 weeks. Okay. So all of a sudden, I worked that Monday, and then I worked that Tuesday, and then he called me into the office, and I was said, oh my God, I'm not going to keep this job. And he called me in the office, and he said to me, look, you have the job. And he said, but you can't live on the salary you're asking for. So I'm giving you a raise, plus I'm giving you hospitalization. You got a wife, you got children. And from that time on, him and I worked together great. It was one of, I get sort of emotional on this thing. With Ben Cooper and I, we had such a rapport together. It was just so great working for him. I mean, Nat Cooper was great to me, and the whole family was so great to me. Wow. It was really a great job. And doing those costumes was not work. It was a lot of fun. Aww. And we worked together so great together.
Boy, you must have loved seeing all those legions and swarms of kids every Halloween all wearing your artwork on their costumes.
My gosh, I remember when Nat Cooper's father-in-law had a party, and he didn't live very far from me in Brooklyn, and we were all up there, and my wife Iris was there, and I remember Nat Cooper coming over to Iris and saying, "How do you feel when you see Frank's artwork all over the country?" He says, and I said, "Oh my gosh!" And I remember how she was blooming. It's to me, it was just amazing. It was just amazing.
I love that. You know, starting there in 1962, beyond the devil and the clown, do you remember like the first costumes that you illustrated, that you worked on?
Well, the first ones were devils and clown, and then I don't know exactly. I remember we did Spider-Man that year. It was new, and a few others. I don't actually remember what ones were that I actually did at that particular time. But every time a new movie came out, or we did comic books, and I mean, Ben Cooper or Nat Cooper was able to get the licensing, and we'd go up and see a movie, or sometimes they just looking at pictures because the movie wasn't out yet, and we make costumes of it.
That's great to hear your history of your artwork, Frank, and it's just amazing. And so many kids just owe a big debt of gratitude because of what you did and how they felt. I know as a kid wearing my Spider-Man and Batman costume, I felt like those characters, and it was so empowering. But now let's go to the next year. In 1963, where Ben Cooper Company had produced thousands of John F. Kennedy masks, which had to be destroyed after his assassination. Now, Ira, do you still have any of those in your personal collection, or can you tell us anything about that time period?
Well, I remember that we destroyed a whole bunch of them. We destroyed a whole batch of them. But no, I never had any.
Okay.
I never collected any of that. Some of the stuff I collected, and I had a whole bunch of stuff, mask and costume. But when I moved, I got rid of them, not realizing that they were collected items. I'm not realizing it.
You know, I think I have got more Ben Cooper costumes in my collection than you do.
You might. We're not only rebuilding a collection, but we're looking at museum quality ways of restoring and preserving this art, because it's Frank's art, and it's also his collaboration with Ben and Nat, and an unseen person behind the scenes, Mrs. Bruman, who was Ben Cooper and Nat Cooper's sister, who had been in the fashion industry. And a good deal of the improvement that you see in patterns between Ben Cooper and the competition was due to her fashion knowledge. And she and Frank worked together very closely. But back to the Kennedy situation, we were dealing in thousands of dozens. When we dealt with Spider-Man, we were dealing with tens of thousands of dozens, 50,000 dozen, 60,000 dozen. When we got to Star Wars, that multiplied exponentially. So destroying a number of Kennedy masks out of respect so that they wouldn't be used sort of in the marketplace, to cheapen the situation was a decision that Ben and Nat made together. I remember the night. I don't believe it was the night of the assassination, but it was that following weekend, because the brothers would get together and have meetings pretty much continually, whether it was in the back of the car or it was on the train or it was at one of their houses. They were constantly living the business. And I remember my mother weighing in on it also, and just this idea that out of respect, they had to destroy those things. Because they could have sold them. There was Kennedy was very famous, very popular in popular culture. There was even a long-playing LP that was very popular, I think, with Vaughn Meader. And the sales of that record went up after Kennedy was gone. But Ben and Nat felt that it was disrespectful to sort of cartoon or lampoon him in terms of a Halloween mask.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that was the best decision of all. But now, speaking of great decisions, let's jump ahead now to 1977, when the world was hit by this little tiny space movie that could, and of course, that is Star Wars. And merchandising companies like Kenner, they didn't know the potential of this film right away and had to scramble to get stuff out by the end of the year or even in 1978. So when did Ben Cooper acquire the rights from Lucasfilm, and how'd you get the costumes out so quickly that Halloween of 1977?
Well, one thing, and Frank will corroborate this, in those years, nearly everything we produced was, if not 100% produced in the U.S., it was produced in two places at once. So we may have had some production in the Orient, in Asia, but we had substantial production in the U.S. So we could ramp up, ramp down, adjust, and that was deliberate. Ben, and especially Nat, who had pioneered going overseas, didn't feel that all the eggs should be put in one basket. It was too risky. So when Star Wars came along and they had early indication that it was going to be something, and they couldn't tell whether it was a hit or not because, first of all, it wasn't out yet, but second of all, movies in general didn't do that well. They might have long-term effect like Universal Monsters, but they didn't have instant effect on sales. And but they could tell from the amount of money being put in and the people behind it that something was going to happen that was substantial. So they had enough warning to secretly, and they kept it from the sales force, because I was on the sales force by then. They kept it from the sales force. They kept it from everybody, and they just produced day in and day out, night and day, and socked the stuff away into warehouses. And then as it developed, they developed the packaging. They were used to doing a lot of things at once. In other words, it wasn't a continuum from Mickey Mouse to other Disney characters to TV to other such monsters. It all had to happen at once because it all had to be ready for one day of the year of sales, or essentially what was one day. So it wasn't that unusual for them to jump on something. What was unusual was that they had the right materials. Thank God Darth Vader didn't need a lot of decoration. And you know, they had the machinery. At that point, they had the largest vacuum forming and silk screening plant probably in the country, if not the world. So, you know, running black vinyl through for Darth Vader and black cloth, they were able to do it.
Now, whose decision was it to put an image of the character on the costume as opposed to having it look more like the costume used in the film?
Well, I'll let Frank answer that in general. From a sales perspective, I can give you another answer, but let Frank field that one.
Well, I think it was Ben Cooper, because he knew what children wanted. And I'm positive. Sometimes we made a costume that we didn't put the picture on, but most of them we put pictures on. And it seemed that Ben Cooper knew that the children liked the picture. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Now, Frank, did you know that your Darth Vader costume artwork is now on T-shirts and people everywhere are wearing these because they love the vintage look of it?
No, John just told me that a few minutes ago before this interview. He told me that. I think it's great. I mean, when I look at that Darth Vader, I think of all the costumes, I think that thing really is the greatest. The one I like really more, I enjoyed most of all was Darth Vader, because he really pops out at you, especially on our poncho. Oh my gosh!
You know, there's a history to the poncho. Ben was always very open to anybody else's ideas, at least at the inception of the idea, and he'd been looking for something where he didn't need to necessarily pack a mask, and we couldn't figure it out. What is it that we could do? We tried play sets, but they were kind of flat. They didn't quite work. They didn't have enough image on them for Ben, which is, you know, what Frank is describing. And I happened to have gone camping and picked up a poncho, and it had one of the first camouflage prints on it. And I took it back after a weekend in Vermont, and took it back to Ben, and I said, why don't you print on these? And Ben would, he never had an idea, didn't have to be his own. He gave you credit. And boy, the ponchos just went nuts. I think actually Spider-Man was the first one. But the reason for those images from a sales perspective was that we needed something visual in the store. We needed, when a costume was hung up in the store, if all it had was Darth Vader's utility belt, that wasn't as much of an impact as Darth Vader's face. Plus, I don't think children were as exposed to large screens, TVs, and the level of graphics that they now associate with a character. So, comic books were small. Movies, again, were not the be-all and end-all in terms of licensing. TV was. That was a small screen. The biggest screen going in the 70s was, 20-something inches. So it was important to have a costume that made an impact. When the child wore it, they looked in the mirror, their friends looked at them, they looked at it in the store. There's just a lot of reasons why. And it was a very fortunate decision because it's created this iconic look that even our competition didn't quite get.
Right. I figured as much. I just wanted to hear it right from you, just to confirm that.
Because I know as an 8-year-old kid, you had a different experience, Richard.
Well, and to the degree that you were going to be scared, Ben was very careful, and so was Nat, not to make characters that were too scary. There was already this sort of psychological scare built into Disney, with evil stepmothers and good versus evil and, all of this kind of stuff. But the blood and the gore they left to other people.
Okay.
Right. Now, with your first costumes, were those more of a full head mask, or were they still just a face mask with an elastic band around it?
Well, the innovation from gauze to vacuum forming was a Ben Cooper innovation. And it took quite a bit of money and risk to do that. The gauze you could sew a back onto, or you could split the back and have it go over the head. But Ben didn't feel that a child was in really good, it really wasn't safe. And the kids don't like stuff all over their heads. So he felt that the vinyl mask gave you all that realism and color and all of that ability to have masquerade and fantasy, but it was lighter on the kid. Now we look back and we say, we were very hot in them. But imagine wearing a gauze hood with with eye holes you couldn't see out of.
Right.
So, looking the other direction, the vacuum form mask was not only more comfortable and safer, but it was brighter, it was more interesting, and it could be used as play. And again, that was Ben and Nat's big deal, because they would say to the buyer, you may have to have the stuff off the shelf November 1st, but the child is still playing with it at home.
And so cosplaying was born.
Yeah.
Yes, cosplay was born, and not that anybody knew that's what they were doing.
Right. Now, Frank, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Speaking as the artist, were you given some of the Star Wars designs to look at to create these costumes? And what did you think of the art of the costumes themselves, or the art of, the design of Darth Vader, the design of C-3PO?
I guess I was given, I'm trying to think way back. I guess I was given pictures because the movie hadn't come out yet when we first did these things. And I guess I was given pictures, and from the pictures, I designed a costume. Probably Ben Cooper and I got together, maybe Mrs. Brooman too, and we designed the costumes the way we thought. Some, I think it was Chewbacca, we made the whole costume look sort of like, his fur and we even did the legs with fur. And we did part of the most of them we put the figure on. And I think it was between Ben Cooper and I and Mrs. Brooman. That's how most of it was Ben Cooper and I.
Okay.
And that's how I remember.
Right.
Now, let me ask you both. Do you recall how many Star Wars costumes were made altogether, Ira?
Well, I can tell you, because I was in on a lot of the projection meetings. And Robert Cooper, Ben's son, was very bright and had really brought the company into the computer age. At that point, I think we were still time sharing on computers in Brooklyn. We were interfacing with IBM. We had built a cold room for a mainframe machine that, was like 4 feet, 5 feet tall and 8 feet wide. That now, of course, you could wear on your wrist. But it was a spectacular time in a lot of ways, and we were doing a lot of this in the winter. And so in Brooklyn, you've got all the different power issues and heat issues in an old factory. And then on top of that, we would get together for a projection meeting. And I remember one day at the factory, the heat was off. So Ben and Nat, of course, let everybody go because, that's simply the way they cared for their people. But the rest of us stayed huddled up in our coats. I was inputting data into a very strange little IBM thing that they had brought over in preparation for the mainframe. And the brothers and Bob and Ira D and myself were in this projection meeting, and we couldn't even keep a straight face. The numbers were nothing like we had ever seen. Wow. Bob would get a note from a regional chain like McCrory's. He would combine it with what Nat knew about Walmart. And before you knew it, they were projecting numbers in the hundreds of thousands of dozens in the short term. And I asked Nat, how are you I asked the room in general, how are you going to keep up with this just in the projections? And Bob's answer was a little bit off color, but very funny, that you have to have brass, what, to do the projections, because you had to go buy the material. And Nat added to that, and you've got to do it often. So projection meetings, instead of being once every few weeks, became almost weekly, if not every other day meetings with phone calls back and forth and everything else. And, you can add it up pretty fast. Hundreds of thousands of dozens is exactly what it sounds like. And that's the vinyl, the cloth, the thread, the paint, the silk screens, the masks, the mask for, the vinyl for the mask, the vinyl for the costume, the boxing, the cartons to pack them in, the tape in the factory to tape the cartons, and then the places to put them. At one point, we used an ice warehouse in Brooklyn, which I was glad to work in because it was cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
Frank, did you design the box art for Ben Cooper's costumes, or did you design just the costumes themselves?
I did the cost. I remember designing some boxes when I first started there, but then it was very, very short time, and I remember doing some, but then they had a company that did boxing, and he did all the designing of the boxes.
What was happening at the time was that the box industry was mechanizing faster than almost any industry in the country, because we were moving into this packaging, the golden era of packaging. And they had a company in Philadelphia called Royal Pioneer that had literally built a machine where raw material went in one side and finished, folded, glued, ready to go boxes came out the other about a quarter of a mile away.
Wow.
And I'd gone down there a number of times with my dad. So the boxing was, and that's why you see such bright colors on the Star Wars boxes and such precision in the way they were made.
Now, is it me, or did the Star Wars costumes come out a little bit later than most of the costumes? Because I do recall hounding my mother for weeks for a Star Wars costume, and they just weren't out.
In 77?
In 1977.
Yeah, again, that was Bob's innovation. Bob realized right away that he had to split his orders, that if he waited to ship complete orders with Star Wars, he was not going to meet the distribution requirements of these growing chains. So he had to deal with how he was going to funnel a second wave of Halloween into these chains. And that also meant that very often we started pre-pricing those for the chain, so they wouldn't have to stop in their warehouse, get open, priced, and put back in, because there were no UPC codes then. You didn't just print a code and then that was it. That came later. So it was a dual distribution, and it took some convincing to convince the buyers that we were going to be able to make a second wave of shipments.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, so then Star Wars came out in different waves in Halloween of 77.
Right.
Were they initially released with the other Halloween costumes, or was it a little bit later on?
Well, the sales force knew about them, and we sold them at the same time.
Okay.
That first toy fair, but we warned the customers that it would be that second wave of shipping. So if the first orders went out in June and July to big chains, they were not going to get Star Wars until September.
Okay.
Okay.
It was tight. But again, the unusual thing about Star Wars is nobody cared. If it hit the shelf October 30th, it still sold.
Well, I can tell you one person who cared, and that was my mother, because every day, I want to be Darth Vader. 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 That's all she heard.
Well, nobody could promise. Whatever store you were going to, none of the promises could be, guaranteed as to when it was going to get there, because, there's lots of stuff that happens to delay a shipment, not just on our side.
Wow. Yeah. So speaking as someone who wasn't alive in 77, very sad. I just want to get an overview of what costumes were available that year.
Well, I mean, it was standard fare. Spider-Man was the biggest thing we had ever seen. And Ben Cooper had this unusual Spider-Man, which Frank can speak to as to why that art was so different from other Spider-Man art. And it never seemed to matter. There was less... the studios and the licensors didn't exert the kind of control they do now, because they seem to like the variety and the interpretation, whereas now they want this consistency. But Spider-Man was far and away 6, 7, 10 times any other character. But then you had all the other superheroes. You had whatever was being promoted on TV at the time, and I'd have to look at a catalog for that year. But I think the toy companies were promoting things like Transformers and Pound Puppies and Care Bears and other stuff like that. And then, of course, Disney, which was always a mainstay.
Frank, do you recall doing the Spider-Man artwork and why it looked different?
Yeah, I remember doing it, yes. But I'm positive it was Ben Cooper's idea. I was just new at the company at that time.
Yeah, Ben had a great sense of color and a great sense of humor. And sometimes he would look at a character and he would say, "There's not enough there. I got to add more. I need more color. I need more dress up. I need more mask. I need more face. I need more of something that's not human." I mean, he would have ways. And I'm sure when he looked at the first Spider-Man and saw two colors, red and black, and nothing, or there was some blue there too. And he thought, I got to give the kid 5 colors. I can't give him 3, which really would be 2 colors. It would be a red suit with blue and black painted over it or something. So, a lot of it was just his sense of value and his sense of artistry.
Here's a question that the 5-year-old Rich has always been wanting to ask. In 1974, I got a Hulk costume, and he was yellow. Any behind-the-scenes stories as to why the Hulk was yellow?
Yeah, there are stories, and I'll tell you one from my personal experience, and I don't know that this applies exactly, but I once made about 20,000 kites for Eddie Bauer, and I made them in red, and because I had my own business by the time I was finished with Ben Cooper, and I made them in red, and I got a call from the buyer. The 20,000 orange kites were in the store.
Oh.
We're running to the store because we had made them in China. Now, you can get, when you make things overseas, you can get a different perception of color too. But we go into the store, and sure enough, they're orange, and we're all very upset. So I buy one, and I take it outside. By the time I got it to my car, it was red. So color is seen in different ways in different places. And the lighting in the factory is one kind of lighting. The lighting over a machine is another kind of lighting, and mistakes happen.
Okay, I think a 5-year-old Rich would be satisfied with that answer.
It's no different than a misprint on a stamp. It makes it that much more valuable.
I recall getting all my comic books, all my toys, going, okay, in every picture and form, he's green, but with the costume he's yellow. Maybe I'm missing something here, but you know what? There's my answer.
So did you buy the Hulk costume?
You know what? It was a mail order.
Oh.
So when I got it and it was yellow,
I see.
I was, as a 5-year-old, I was very confused.
Upset.
But still, you know what? I was the Hulk, so it was a great Halloween.
Well, and anybody who loved Marvel, and Stan Lee was for a while was a near neighbor of ours, although we didn't socialize with him at all. Anybody who was into Marvel had a great affinity for the characters, and kids know, and it has to be right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
It sounds like you're describing Richards right now.
Yeah, well, I was describing me too, because I was mortified that we didn't have a Spider-Man that looked exactly like Spider-Man, and I was glad when we came out with the poncho.
Oh, okay.
Now, do you recall how many different styles of Star Wars that you had made? Because there's one that I didn't know about until very recently, and that was R2d2. I never knew there was an R2d2 costume until like this week.
Well, because the innovation of R2d2, there were two things. One, we couldn't figure out how to make an R2d2 that was anything but a tiny tot. Because who is going to want to wear a diminutive costume if they're a big kid? So we didn't know how many to make on that one. Secondly, the innovation of the silver mask. Limited, I don't know, Frank might know this better, but I had heard that it limited production somewhat, and it was also somewhat expensive. But yeah, I mean, how many kids want to be shorter than they are?
I don't know. Some kids are short and they embrace it, like me.
Well, perhaps, but we all think of ourselves as tall, So it was always that sort of issue. But again, Ben and Nat said if it's good dress up, it'll sell. And so they made them.
Did you ever hear the story from Mark Hamill, how he said that Halloween in 1977 and 78 and on, he would go into stores and every Star Wars costume had been bought out except for Luke Skywalker?
Yeah, and I know the reason for it too.
Because most people that wanted to be Luke just dressed up with a karate gi and tan pants?
Yeah, I mean, the essence of Halloween was masquerade, and one doesn't very well masquerade as a person. We're more likely to masquerade as a meme, an icon of something symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
Whose decision was it to make the certain characters that you had produced? Was that Ben Cooper or was that Lucasfilm?
Well, there's always pressure from the licensor, but it was really Ben, Nat, and Bob and Ira, who was more involved in production, but really Ben, Nat, and Bob who would have made those decisions based on anything else that they knew was happening with that character. How many promotions, how many commercials, how many personal appearances, how good the dress-up value is, what role they play in the movie. But again, nobody expected a movie to do anything like this. And if it did, the sequel never did anything.
Oh, wow.
Were there any characters that just never made it to shelves, that just hit the production line and something just wasn't right, so it was never released widely?
In Star Wars or in other?
In Star Wars and in other films.
Yeah, it was continual. I mean, Nat would buy a license, pay the upfront fee, and then the show was never made.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Can you name any of those licenses?
I would have to look back through the catalog, but there are definitely ones that are in catalogs that they never shipped.
Okay.
Because the catalog had to be produced very early, which itself was a work of art. One of my father's friends did the hand work, the art on the catalogs, and it was a big effort that started in the summer.
Were there any Star Wars costumes that never made it to production, just to the design phase?
Star Wars, we produced whatever we'd intended to, but we very quickly adjusted the figures because we simply didn't sell as many of some as of others. Well, when we put Luke into a helmet, he sold better.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I have a question for Frank. Was there ever any art that you worked on that you liked the best that just didn't get produced?
No. I can't think of anything.
Of course, when the Chinese factory put white eye holes on Darth Vader, there was some consternation amongst the sales force. and I'm sure at Lucasfilm.
Right. Now, who has the original artwork for these costumes?
I have some original artwork of some of the costumes that I did. I have an original sketch of Yoda.
Oh, wow.
Not the blue one, the full length sketch of him.
Do you happen to have the original Darth Vader costume sketch?
No, I don't have that, but I have that, and I have an original sketch of Tinkerbell. I have an original sketch of Bambi.
Oh my goodness! Wow, if you shared those pictures on the internet, like everyone would be going crazy for those.
That would be amazing. Ira, do you know what happened to the original artwork? The stuff that Frank doesn't have?
Well, Frank can correct me, but for the most part, these were working days in a factory where original sketches got changed, original things got cut up for the purpose of silk screening and using that masking, the ruby red masking that they would use when they would shoot through a screen. So things were just very naturally pulled, spindled, and mutilated just in their use.
Gotcha.
It's not like today where you do a sketch and you digitize it and then you can save it and reuse it in other ways. Whatever you created as art was commercial art, and it had to be manipulated. So there wasn't a sense of keeping an archive like that.
Gotcha. Now, we've been saying that these costumes are for children, but in 1979, Ben Cooper had produced their first costume based on an R-rated movie with Alien. How did that go over?
There was a lot of discussion about whether to make that. It almost didn't get made, but I remember, Nat and Ben kind of poring over it, and Bob, I believe, was the one who said, look, if I get orders, we should make it, because, we're not in the habit of letting the competition get major licenses. And of course, this one wasn't so much a successful movie at the time, and it didn't produce very much for children. So it was kind of one of these things. Well, if we don't take it, someone else will. What's the art value that we could put into it? And so they did that heavily sculpted mask over clear vinyl, and they kept the artwork on the suit itself, again, away from as much of the gore as they could. But they couldn't hide from the fact that times were changing.
Yeah.
And I think clearly if they had done more changing, they'd have not run into some of the difficulties they ran into.
Okay. Was this the alien mask? Is that what you
the
guys
alien
are referring
from
to?
Ridley Scott's Alien?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very substantial mask.
Yeah. I recall that Halloween seeing a couple of kids with that costume, and it really scared me. The movie scared me, and so did the costume, because now here it was in front of my face.
Yeah, there was nothing like that, and it was a pretty harsh movie.
Yeah. Kids went into it thinking it was going to be another Star Wars because it's called Alien. Nope.
Right.
Star Wars didn't have face huggers.
Yeah.
Now, going over your catalog, it's like going through a tour through my childhood. I remember so many of these and such fond memories. Now, can each of you name your overall most favorite costume from Ben Cooper? Frank, what is your overall favorite? Not just that you designed, but in the end.
Well, I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't know. I still go for Darth Vader. I still go for him. Nice. I think that was my favorite.
Okay.
For having a villain to be so popular, it really was something.
Well, I side with you. Darth Vader's still my favorite Ben Cooper costume. Ira, how about yourself?
Well, I go back a little further, and I go back to Zorro, because remember, when I wanted a costume, they made it at the factory for me. So I had the first Zorro play suit, and at one point, Dad had even brought home Guy Williams' Zorro face mask. I don't know what kind of promotion or reason they had it, and of course we couldn't keep it. It had to go back the next day. But I had a Zorro that was embroidered, and had a red sash and had a brand new hat and et cetera, et cetera. So I was treated a little bit different. But other than Zorro, I had to be Superman if I walked out of the house.
Nice. Oh, I hear you. I lived in my Superman pajamas. They weren't Ben Cooper, but I loved it.
Now, going over your list of infinite number of characters, you had characters like Flying Nun, you had Fonzie, Muhammad Ali, Donnie and Marie, a Rubik's Cube at one time, Laura Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie, and second to Darth Vader, you had a secret squirrel costume. These are some obscure characters, but I guess at that time, they weren't too obscure.
Well, if they had exposure on Saturday morning TV, then they were ripe for Halloween, as long as the show didn't get canceled, over the summer. But Saturday morning TV was the network's way of creating family programming, or one of the ways, and that created X number of impressions before there was even an advertisement for another toy or anything else. And then if Mattel or Kenner or Coleco or anybody else made a toy relative to that property, then there were all even more impressions of that character out there. So by the time the kid got to the store at Halloween, the advertising was done for us. So we could make hay out of a relatively minor character a little bit better than a toy company could, who had to physically sell you a likeness that you would manipulate or that you would, use in some other way.
The two costumes that really raise an eyebrow for me are Rubik's Cube and Laura Ingalls.
I'm not convinced that Rubik's Cube sold very well. Laura Ingalls, of course, Laura Ingalls had the same problem as Luke Skywalker in terms of the mask, but not in terms of dress up.
Okay.
Right. Frank, do you recall if you had done the Rubik's Cube costume?
No, I don't recall that one.
Yeah, this must have been in the early 80s.
If it was in the early 80s, it had to be me. There are a lot of costumes I look at. I don't actually remember doing them, and then all of a sudden that pops into me. Oh, yes, now I remember.
Okay.
How many artists were there in Ben Cooper?
Frank was the only artist.
Oh,
the only artist of note.
Yeah, I was the only one that did the artwork.
And Frank would work with Ben Cooper almost every weekend.
You must have never slept. That's a lot of costumes.
I actually took work home and did it in my basement. I had Ben Cooper had put up a whole big art table for me. Must have been 6 to 7 foot long, and it was a light table. So I used to actually do work in Ben Cooper's and do it actually at home too.
Richard, we're showing Frank a photo of the Rubik's Cube costume.
Now that's 1980. My gosh. When I see these things, that sort of popped in, my memory pops back.
That's
I can't imagine how many thousand of these costumes I must have done. It's so difficult to remember every one of them.
Oh, yeah. But
I remember, one thing I do remember about the alien, they had sent me a photo of the alien, and I was not supposed to let anybody see it.
Wow. Was there any design that you had created that they said, hey, can you go in a different direction with this? Or was it whatever you came up with was produced?
Well, a lot of times I would sketch out the design and I put it in color, and we would send it to the company, mail it to them, or a lot of them were right in New York. Sometimes they would say it was fine. Sometimes they would put an overlay on and change a little. Sometimes they would change it completely. But most of the times, they seemed to go along with what I did, but they would change it a little. Or sometimes, never at all. They probably figured we know what we were doing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but the hardest one, remember, Frank, was Children's Television Workshop.
Children's Television Workshop, I don't know.
Yeah, PBS for Cookie Monster and...
you mean Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. That they were the because Nat Cooper was trying to get them for so many years, for 10 years, and they finally said yes, and we did. I remember Ben Cooper and I and Mrs. Bruman, I think it was, and we all sat down, and Nat Cooper too, to see how we could produce Sesame Street. So we did them the way Halloween costumes were always made, and everything was hand painted. I hand painted the front of the costume. We pasted on, we glued it on a whole costume. The mask I hand painted on a piece of board. We showed it to them, and we had them hung up so beautifully on hangers. And we went to Sesame Street, and they were all lined up nicely. And I remember Ben Cooper and I were sitting next to each other, and Nat Cooper and Mrs. Bruman, and their art director came in. He looked at the stuff, and he said, "The worst stuff I've ever seen." And I remember Ben Cooper putting his hand on my arm and just patting me and saying, they didn't say anything, but just don't say a word. And then I guess maybe the art director there didn't like me stepping on his feet or something. I don't know. But then we got together and, we talked it over, and everything was smoothed out, and it worked out great.
Wow. Well, that's good. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I am looking at pictures of these costumes, and actually they're really, really cool. I think Oscar the Grouch, the costume even has his trash can there, and the Count. The Count looks really amazing.
Yeah, so I can see the problem here, that these costumes were too good.
Well, that was the eventual result of the collaboration. The originals, I think, were quite that deluxe, and it presented some serious problems because by that point we were committed to vinyl costumes that were roller printed, and there were certain ways in which you have to construct vinyl as opposed to sewing fabric, or hybrid costumes that were a little bit of both. So it took a lot of engineering, and I think Dad went to Taiwan about 6 times that year.
Wow.
Getting those things engineered because it had to be right. But you can see that they were very innovative for their time. They were the beginnings of this super realism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a big sales point I recall from the vinyl suits is that they were flame retardant. Was that innovative for Ben Cooper?
Well, everything was flame retardant, which meant not that it wouldn't necessarily melt or burn, but it didn't actively support a flame. So the interstices of the cloth, the air in the cloth, was not the cloth wasn't woven in such a way that it would make a flame rise up. It didn't feed the flame, and it was the same thing with the vinyl. You obviously, if you hold a flame to vinyl, it's going to do something, but what you don't want is it to flare up and spread.
Right.
Wow, that's a great sales push right there. I know for a lot of parents, especially at Halloween, when there's a lot of open flames with pumpkins and such. Was this something that Ben Cooper had pioneered?
Well, early on, you'll see it in costumes as early as the 40s. They did use what was considered a flame retardant rayon, and rayon in those days was actually a wood product.
Oh wow!
Rayon now is a synthetic made from petroleum, but in those days, the rayon was a wood product, and if you can still get some natural rayon in very high-end women's clothing, and it's a demonstrably different cloth.
Wow, yeah, Ben Cooper had a lot going for it with this flame retardant feature, plus the costumes just looked great. And I do recall as a kid there was another company called Collegeville, but they weren't nearly as great as the Ben Cooper costumes. Were they a big rival for you back then?
Yeah, they were the rival. There were 3 or 4 others, one of which Ben Cooper absorbed, which was the Iskin Company, and we absorbed 1 or 2 of their very interesting people too into our offices at the time. I remember they were some real old time New Yorkers. They were really cool old guys. But Collegeville emerged as the major competitor because they had a sense of licensing, but they didn't have Ben.
Right.
They just didn't have Ben. I mean, really, and I think Frank, and they didn't have Frank. I mean, that combination of Ben and Frank, look what they turned out. And, remember, and Nat, of course, and Bob coming after him pioneered everything needed to get these costumes into a changing retail market. We didn't go to vinyl because we thought vinyl was better than cloth. We went to vinyl because the inflation of the 70s, if you remember the Nixon administration, mortgages were 20%.
Right.
Inflation was running 10 and 15% a year, and there was no end in sight. Wow. And the buyers in the big stores were demanding lower prices, or they were going to drop Halloween altogether. Oh. It was a much bigger threat than Tylenol.
Oh, yeah, that in 1982 with the whole cyanide scare.
The pricing was a bigger scare, believe me, than Tylenol.
And plus, Ben Cooper got the Star Wars license. Did Collegeville try to get that license before you? Was there a battle?
I'm sure there was, but if you wanted distribution, if you wanted the artwork, if you wanted the Cooper stamp on something, you came to Cooper. And even at Toy Fair, where Nat would sit in the showroom just observing because he didn't sell a lot of accounts except a couple of major national accounts, and that selling was done months before Toy Fair ever arrived. He would really receive, like the king of licensing, he would receive everybody from Shari Lewis to Curious George to whatever, people who wanted Ben Cooper to make their items.
Nice.
Right. And then when did Ben Cooper Incorporated finally close its doors? And why?
Well, there were 2 bankruptcies, which I was really moving into my own business by that time. So the internal things that happen with companies, management gets older, things don't quite change as fast as they should. People have different visions for the company. It just happens as it changes from one generation to another. During the first bankruptcy, I was full on selling, but I had already made plans to move to Seattle to begin. For me, it was the gift business, the hobby business, and I also made some of the first Discovery Channel toys. So I was pretty much out of it by then, and it was much more an internal and financial struggle.
Okay.
Do you recall what year this was?
Well, it would have been the year that my youngest, the first bankruptcy, 87, 88. And they emerged from that bankruptcy with a different internal structure. But again, that different internal structure created different decisions being made as to the direction of the company. And by that time, Ben was retired and my dad was looking towards retirement.
Okay. And Frank, were you still there at the company at the time?
Yeah, I was still there until 1989.
Okay.
But it's right about the same time frame.
One time I had 3 artists underneath me, that were in it. It was me plus 3 other artists. And little by little, he was letting each one of them go. And I was the only one left. Then finally, he come to me and told me, we're going to have to let you go. And what they were doing, they had an artist in Hong Kong doing everything. Because I noticed I was doing sketches and they would send them to Hong Kong or bringing them there or whatever. And the thing is, what was lucky with me is that I was ready to retire. I was going to, inside of a month or so, I would have left.
Right.
It just so happened that Ira come to me and said, we're going to let you go.
And this is the other Ira.
And I said, oh, fine. I wasn't angry. I figured I'm going to leave anyway. But he said, we're going to give you 14 weeks pay. That made me smile.
And we'll give you this free Darth Vader costume. And then in 1992, Ruby's had bought Ben Cooper Incorporated, so I guess everything came to an end when it was supposed to.
Well, and Ruby's had foreseen a level of detailing and price flexibility on adult costuming that I don't think our family saw. We might have gotten there eventually, had other things being equal, but it would have been a different landscape of competition. that's the way it goes.
So you guys obviously have a long, long history in this company. Is there a book or a website that documents all your costumes from beginning to end?
John?
Well, we have a website. It's bencoopercostumes.com, and we're in the process of going through 55 years of catalogs with thousands of costumes, so you can imagine it's a big project.
Wow.
But we'll be announcing hopefully a book deal in the next couple weeks for a book, the first official Ben Cooper history that's going to come out in 2018, time for Halloween.
Fantastic.
Oh, how exciting.
Fantastic. All right, now, before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you want to tell us that we haven't covered about Ben Cooper Incorporated? Ira?
Well, I think there's an aspect to the history of the company relative not just to popular culture and the kind of art that Frank has created, which really bridges fine art and pop art in a very significant way because of its involvement in social change. And I don't mean social change like civil rights, unfortunately, although you'll see elements of that in the line, but social change in terms of the way people live and what they value. And I think there's also an immigrant story. It's not a rags to riches story, but it's an immigrant to substantial contribution to the business scene story. And I don't think Ben Cooper's place in innovation in the toy business is well known. And I think that's something that will come out of all of this in a significant way, both for the brothers themselves and for what they did.
Wow, Ben Cooper Incorporated is bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
This is so interesting. How about you, Frank? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to tell us?
No, all I can say, you people are great. Everything is, to me, this is amazing. I'm sitting on a cloud.
Aww. Well, we're so happy to share your stories. I mean, it's just amazing to get to talk to both of you.
Yeah, if you had told an 8-year-old Rich that I'd be talking to the Ben Cooper company, I wouldn't have believed it. What is this 2017 you're talking about?
Well, if you're nice to us, we'll sign one of your old costumes.
Ooh.
Whoa. Okay. We love you. And thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing the history of Ben Cooper Incorporated and all your fantastic costumes. And I can't tell you personally how much this means to me. So thank you a million times over. You've made a 40-year-old dream come true.
Oh, I thank you.
You're welcome, certainly.
All right. Well, one thing left to say. Happy Halloween.
Oh, same to you.
Happy Halloween.
Make Halloween fun and easy. One-stop shopping at Woolworth or Woolco for your Halloween needs. Costumes from $1.83 to $3.99, like $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, superheroes, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, and a new favorite for girls, Holly Hobby. You can get wrapped candies of every kind, bubblegum, lollipops, fun-size candy bars. Get this Halloween record, Sounds to Make You Shiver, just $1.89. Make Halloween fun and easy. Make just one stop at Woolworth or Woolco.
Shout-outs, Skywalker shout-outs. Which Skywalkers get props from here in Neverland? Who was tweeted out? Shout out. Who was photobombed? Shout out. Who was shared a post? Shout out.
So we were very happy to do another classic Marvel Star Wars comics last week because it had been 4 months since our last episode, and I love doing these episodes, but with Randy's schedule and our schedule.
And then he was moving. The time just flies. Like, all of a sudden, it had been 4 months, and we didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
So.
And it was an episode where we had a great discussion before diving into the actual comic, where we talked about branding and how Howard Chaykin, the original Star Wars artist, had said that it's all about the branding now. It's not about the actual subject matter or the artist's hard work.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear all about this great discussion, go to our latest classic Marvel Star Wars comics where we dive into issue number 15, Star Duel. Now, Jason Benham on Facebook, he wrote, "Great episode, guys. I can't say enough how much I've missed hearing Randy's Meanwhile
Meanwhile...
That's Randy's favorite word.
Yes.
And he ends it with hashtag make who jibs canon.
Awesome.
Right on.
All right, so on Twitter, we have a shout out at Brian M. Sims. He tweeted a picture of himself with a very surprised face, very haunted face, saying, "My Skywalker selfie reaction when I learned that Donald and Joey watched Star Wars Rebels in the Lucasfilm theater." That would be my reaction too. So we liked your surprised face, Brian. That was funny. And just as a reminder, hashtag Skywalker selfie, you can do that anytime. You can take a picture of what you're doing right now, whether it's washing dishes or running or driving, maybe wait till a light.
Or remodeling a kitchen.
Or remodeling a kitchen. You can take a picture of yourself and then post it to Twitter at SkywalkingPod and use the hashtag Skywalker selfie. Say, hey, I'm listening. Yay. All right, so are you ready, Richard? This is my surprise for you. So we have some iTunes reviews. And I don't know if we have some new iTunes reviews in the US, but we have some new iTunes reviews in Canada. Or actually, we're going to go back in time because I went searching through iTunes through different countries. You can actually change the country of iTunes and then look at your podcast reviews, and there's different reviews. It's super exciting. So, iTunes in Canada, there's a review by Benjamin Spears from November 3rd, 2015. Are you ready for this?
Ready.
All right. He says, "I've been listening to the Rebel Force radio crew for a long time and heard about this podcast through the Fangirls Going Rogue show. What a fun podcast. What a fun podcast. The hosts are really cheerful and positive. The shows are jam-packed with great content and interviews, and the production quality is great. As a Canadian who has never been to the Disney park, I'm a little jealous of the fact that the hosts practically live there. But through the show, I can at least have a taste of the experience and the community. I'll get there eventually when the kids are a bit older and Star Wars Land opens up. So see you in 2019, Benjamin. I also wonder what the hosts actually do for a living since they seem to be at Disney for every special event that happens there. Maybe they should give career tips. If you're a fan of Disney and Star Wars, this is definitely a great show to check out. You can tell that the hosts live and breathe this stuff." Aww.
Wow, what a great review. Thank you, Benjamin Spears.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, to answer your question, Benjamin, it's very easy when Disneyland is 19 minutes away.
Yes.
So we can still work and go to Disneyland when there's the events happening during the day. Well, we can take off. As long as we have our cell phone in our hand, well, we're at work.
Yeah.
So we can take off for a little bit, or after we're done with work throughout the day, we need a little bit of relaxing, we just go down to Disneyland.
Yeah, go there for an evening, really, and have dinner, kind of walk around. It's fun. All right, and then we have an iTunes review. I went to Austria to find out because I have a lot of family in Austria, and we did have one review in Austria by Star Herder. And this review is from April of 2015. And Star Herder says, "They bring so much enthusiasm to every episode. It's amazing. Very refreshing. It's great to listen to their adventures as well as their interviews with people from all over the world." So,
wow.
Yay.
Now, are we working our way up, starting in 2015, and every show we'll read another review from 2015, 2016, 2017?
Not that. I'm just going to go through different countries because I think it's fun.
Okay.
And I was surprised that Austria was not in German. Like, I didn't have to translate that.
Oh.
It was written in English. So I guess that makes sense since our podcast is in English. So English-speaking people would be listening to it, even if they're logged into iTunes in Austria.
So we need to do a segment within a segment. Shout-outs from around the world.
Yeah. How fun. All right. Well, let's go back to Twitter for this next shout-out. And now, this is proof that our Facebook group brings people together. So last Saturday, some Skywalkers on the East Coast near Boston, they got together for a Skywalker coffee meetup. Like, without us, there was 4 of them. So Amanda Bakken tweeted a picture of them all together in front of this beautiful forest turning fall colors.
Oh.
I got really jealous.
Oh, I'm deeply, deeply jealous.
I know, and they're all looking at the camera, and she says, so much fun today drinking coffee and chatting Star Wars with at Miss Callie Lavoie, at Eric Onkenhout, at Gail Geek. So yay!
And she was wearing her Star Wars, Skywalking Through Neverland Halloween shirt.
Chewie and the Porgs.
Chewie and the Porgs. It was a great picture, but yeah, I was really focused on the fall leaves. Amanda, you're making me very, very jealous because around here in Los Angeles, we don't have a fall right now. Mm-hmm. We have like mid-July weather.
Yeah. Oh, it's over 100. We have like, this is like non-existent weather in LA. It's never over 100 where we are anyway, in Long Beach.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to get into that full Halloween spirit when there's no Halloween fall smells and fall weather where you're gonna put on a jacket
or a long
because there's
shirt,
a brisk chill in the air.
And cuddle up.
Right now you're like wearing a tank top and shorts.
No good.
Yeah, not Halloween weather where I'm from.
So we want to thank all of you Skywalkers for shouting out and posting. And speaking of the Facebook group, we would love for you to join us there. It's a great place to like you see, get to know other Skywalkers and maybe meet up with people you're nearby. And so if you want to do that, you can search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland group. It should pop up. You can request to join because it's a closed group. And then there are 2 questions that pop up. And you need to make sure that you answer those questions or we can't let you in. Even if we recognize your name, you need to be answering those questions.
All right, we got to block Heather Hunt from this feed.
Why?
She writes, it's actually cool here in Florida today, mid-70s.
What? How is that possible?
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, it's mid-70s here.
Weather.
If you add 40 degrees.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yikes.
All right.
But we're just kidding, Heather. Couldn't have a live Skywalking Through Neverland recording without you. All right, now before we talk with Skywalker John Miller about how he had brought Ira and Frank together for this episode, let's hear about the safe ways to carve a pumpkin from everyone's favorite protocol droid, C-3PO.
Hello, listeners. I am C-3PO, and along with my counterpart, R2d2, I have been asked here to bring you some important Halloween safety advice throughout this month of October. Today we will consider the human tradition of pumpkin carving. Yes, R2, you should take particular note as well. Firstly, younglings should never carve pumpkins alone. They can draw a face or shape with markers, then they should let responsible adults do the cutting. That's right, R2. Never use an E11 rifle or any sort of heavy blaster pistol. That would never work. Consider using a flashlight or glow stick instead of a candle or lightsaber to light up your pumpkin. If you do use a candle, a small tea light candle would be the most safe option. If you intend on using a lightsaber, do consult a Jedi Master first. Yes, R2, I was just getting to that. Listeners, candlelit pumpkins should be placed on a sturdy table, away from curtains and other flammable objects, such as fur. Poor Chewbacca. Lit candles should never be left unattended. If you do have to depart, place your astromech to stand alert. Like you have anything better to do, we must make sure our master is safe. Oh, switch off. Where was I? Ah, yes. Above all, do be safe this Halloween. We encourage all you Skywalkers to send us pictures of your pumpkin designs for all to enjoy. You can send them to share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com, facebook.com/skywalkingthroughneverland, or tweet them at skywalkingpod. I think that's enough for today. Join R2 and myself next week for some more Halloween safety advice from Skywalking Through Neverland and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Before we go, R2 would like me to remind you of the most important safety advice of all. Never land on Alderaan. Who on Earth writes these jokes? Or on any other planet, for that matter.
Early this year, we got an email from a Skywalker who had just heard our Halloween episode with Don Post Jr. about the full-head Star Wars masks of the 70s and 80s. He mentioned that he was in contact with the family of the Ben Cooper company who made the mass-market Halloween costumes for kids and asked if we were interested in talking with them. Well, after I picked myself up from the floor, I immediately said yes.
Now let's hear how this whole adventure unfolded with the man that brought us all together, John Miller.
Hey, John.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Well, we are doing great after just talking with such Halloween legends as Ira Cooper and Frank Romano, and what an impact they had on me in the early years.
Yeah, they really had a huge stamp on your childhood,
they sure did. Last Halloween, I wore my Ben Cooper Darth Vader costume.
Didn't we take a picture?
Yes, we did. 40 years later, I'm still wearing this thing.
Oh, wow. Well, John, you know what? Tell us the story of how you came in contact with them.
Sure. Well, I grew up looking forward to Halloween like you wouldn't believe. Like in early August, the Halloween fever would hit me. So, and this goes back to, the late 70s when I was barely conscious, but a little kid running around my neighborhood.
I think I was looking forward to Halloween every November 1st.
Oh, yeah. The bus stop waiting to go to school would be a buzz about what you were going to wear that year. Mm-hmm. So it was very much like strategic. You had to get to the Woolworths in time to get the prime stuff.
Woolworths. Oh, that brings me back.
Yeah. So I guess, Ben Cooper was imprinted on me young because I remember the blue circular logo and I remember the guy's name. But it was really the costumes like when Star Wars hit with Darth Vader and the Stormtrooper. It was literally the first time I asked my mom, could I have two costumes?
Whoa.
And that was a big deal back then. And she looked at me for a minute. She's like, okay. So I got C-3PO and I got Darth Vader back then, and I was set for life.
Whoa. So, Richard, did you only get Darth Vader?
I did in 77.
Okay.
But as a side note, in 1979, I did have two costumes. One was Boba Fett, and the other one was Count Chocula.
Oh, that's great.
You were straddling your fandoms.
I was, but you know what? I don't think I ever made it to the Count Chocula time of night. It was all about Boba Fett because he was so big from the upcoming holiday special.
Okay, I was going to say, because John Miller almost had you beat there with the two costumes.
Well, technically he does because he had two Star Wars costumes.
Okay.
But let me ask you the true geek question. Was it a silver Boba Fett mask or a green one?
Oh, this is the silver.
See, that is the prime collectible for Ben Cooper because the silver one came out first, and that's the one that Frank Romano, the artist, designed based on sketches that he was given by Lucasfilm.
Oh, he must have been going off the white Boba Fett.
Yes.
Wow, how cool is that?
Just thought 70s sci-fi, it's got to be silver.
Got to be silver, but it was actually, they corrected it in when they did the larger second iteration was green. Right. So the silver ones are really hard to find.
Do you still have yours, Richard?
I do. It's in the garage somewhere. Yeah, now I'm just itching to go and dig those out. That and the Stormtrooper and the other Ben Cooper costumes that I had. Chewbacca.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm still looking for a Tusken Raider. They're super rare.
Wow.
Now the Tusken Raider, they just made the mask. They didn't make the whole costume, correct?
Right, because I had a neighbor, and he had to go out in his dad's brown terry cloth robe with the mask.
Yeah, okay, because in your emails you were referring to the Tusken Raiders, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, did I miss a costume?
Mm-hmm.
Did I miss the Tusken Raider? But there were a couple of masks that were just released on their own without the whole vinyl flame retardant costume.
Yeah, so the distinction is they made Star Wars only masks out of China, and then they made the masks that go with the costumes out of the Ben Cooper Halloween costume factory in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now let's fast forward to last Halloween, and you heard our Don Post Jr. episode. Where does your adventure go from there?
Yeah, so when I heard the post, because I knew about Don, and I knew about, he was famous with the full rubber masks, the head, and my older brothers used to collect Don Post masks because they were grotesque and they had that stringy hair attached to them, and they loved to freak me out with those masks. So I love that stuff. And then, when I found out about Ben Cooper, because I had an old 1979 People magazine with Robin Williams on the front as Mork.
Oh.
And I was looking through it one day, and I happened on this tiny section that talked about Ben Cooper, who was actually a real guy. And by then he had owned the Ben Cooper costumes for going on 42 years or something like that, because the boys started in 37. So I actually saw images of Ben Cooper as a real guy and all those iconic costumes from the 70s, because I think that's like the best time for Ben Cooper was the late 70s when Star Wars came out.
Oh, yeah, by far.
Yeah. So there was a picture of this guy that he was working with named Frank Romano, and I was like, wow, I wonder if those guys are still around. I know Ben Cooper probably wasn't because he was in his 70s.
Okay.
But I reached out and found one of the younger Coopers named Ira Joseph. And then Ira Joseph and I reached out and we found good old Frank Romano, who's 93 years young.
Wow.
And when you ran across this article in People magazine, how long ago was that?
That was like going on 3 years ago. It took that long to track down Ira Joseph, and that took that long to track down Frank Romano, because none of these guys are online, by the way. They're all, I literally had to send a snail mail. I had to go back to high school and get up my penmanship.
So where do they live now?
So Ira, I located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's a high school teacher, English and other classes.
Nice.
And Frank is with his family now in outside Detroit in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
All right, so this journey started right before you heard our Don Post episode.
That's right. It was perfect timing, actually, because I love your guys' podcast, and I binged the podcast. I let a month go by, and then I binged them, so it was perfect timing.
Oh, great.
Okay, so you reached out to him like a couple of years ago, you say, and how long before you started getting responses?
I think Ira Joseph took something like 8 months right before I was going to give up.
Oh no.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Frank took another 6 to 7 months because there's so many Romanos in the world that we had to narrow it down. And because he moved recently from Florida to Michigan, there was like a delay in the snail mail, so it was like another month or two before he actually got the letter.
Okay.
Right. And you did all this because of your love for Ben Cooper and the Halloween costumes.
Yeah, to be honest, I've collected Ben Cooper over the years, and I just got to the point where it's like, boy, I'd really like to go a little deeper and find out how these things were made, because for me, it's all about the masks. I love the costumes and everything, but putting the masks on the wall and they're just so iconic, and they don't seem to age. They're just, eternal kind of things. So I just wanted to know who the guys behind it.
So do you have a whole room just dedicated to all these masks?
Not yet. I have too many boxes and stuff, but I do put them up on one specific wall. And, it's kind of seasonal when I'm feeling Star Wars or Disney or anything. And what's great is these masks are so colorful, they're like 5-color masks. But when the artists combine them and everything, they could be like 16 to 20 different colors. So they really pop. And I know from other collectors, they really love mounting the masks on their walls. It's like really kind of cool for them.
Oh, how many do you have?
Now I probably have like 400.
400?
Wow.
Just the masks, not the masks and the costumes.
Yeah, well, I do like to get masks with their original costumes and boxes, because that's kind of a collector's dream.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the other masks, the masks that they made in China, they're just masks, and they're kind of cool because they're so abstract. Because when they made these things, I don't know if you guys know this, but the first trilogy, the Star Wars trilogy, wasn't ever shown in China. It was only shown like 2 years ago for the first time.
That's right.
Yeah, so they didn't even know what they were making. So it's kind of a minor miracle that these costumes came out as good as they did, because Ben Cooper really had, in 6 months, they had to produce millions of Star Wars costumes for the first Star Wars Halloween in 1977.
Wow.
Yeah, and there is a distinction between the American-made and the Chinese-made costumes, because the American-made costumes had harder lines, whereas the Chinese, it was more of a softer look.
Huh.
Yeah, it was much softer. You can tell the difference because the ones made in the U.S. are much harder, and the registration is perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Chinese versions, you get weird things like Darth Vader's mask had white eye sockets.
Whoa.
Yeah, that was just weird.
And C-3PO's mask had red eye sockets.
Oh.
So it's totally bizarre, but really cool at the same time.
Wow. So let me ask you, let's take Star Wars out of the running. What is your favorite Ben Cooper mask that's not Star Wars?
I'm a huge fan of the monster line that they did, but I love the women, the vampires, and the Medusa from the 80s that they did for Clash of the Titans. It's like a really beautiful mask. But I think my favorite of all, one that I actually don't own, is they did one of Cleopatra that was all gold.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, it's a little out of my price range. But, someday, maybe.
All right, now let's get back to the story. So they finally get a hold of you, and when is this now? They finally write back?
Ira was first. He was first of just over a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And then it was Frank, kind of a couple months later. And it was really a treat to try and organize a reunion, because the two guys, the Halloween boys, I call them, they hadn't seen each other in 27 years.
Wow.
And, Ira was much younger, obviously. So he grew up watching Frank do the artwork for the costumes and work in the family factory, which they used to call the place. And so getting them together was a real treat. And it was just kind of a logistical nightmare. But we all descended into Detroit Metro, Ira and myself and Ira's daughter, and we had a nice reunion. It was really touching.
Nice.
And just so you know, I hate snakes, so it took a lot for me to go down in the basement and go through Frank's art with him, because right behind us was a big terrarium with a huge snake in it. So it was kind of pleasure and pain at the same time.
Oh, yeah, you're a braver man than I.
I kept turning around. I'll tell you that.
So when you got this reunion together, when was this now?
This must have been last fall or into the winter.
Okay.
It's hard to remember right now, but I think when we went into this, Michigan's kind of known for its winters. So I remember not being clothed very well for a winter, because I've lived in Northern California for too long.
Right.
So now when you got these guys together and reached out, was it just to reach out to them and talk to them? Were you writing a piece for a publication?
Yeah, always in the back of my mind, because I felt like it was weird. I had this kind of passion for trying to find out what the story of Ben Cooper was, because if you looked online, there's nothing really other than a small Wikipedia stub about Ben Cooper. Mm-hmm. And I know from, other collectors and friends, it made such a huge impact on our childhoods that it would be a real shame if we didn't have the history of the company. So that's kind of my emphasis for reaching out. And then once I found out that they were this awesome Jewish immigrant family that got their start from Walt Disney back in the 30s, it really kind of took off from there.
Wow.
And when you approached these two gentlemen about skywalking through Neverland, what was their reaction?
To be honest, they couldn't believe somebody would want to talk to them about this stuff. Like they're very humble, modest guys. And Ira grew up. The family was very well off because they were the #1 costume company in America for 55 years. But he didn't really like to tell people about it. And Frank is so modest that he's just excited to relive all his favorite memories from the factory and working with Ben Cooper closely.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you going this far above and beyond and sharing your experiences with Skywalking through Neverland and all the Skywalkers out there, because this is a story I never even really thought about because I never thought it was possible. It wasn't until one of our Skywalkers, Donald Wicks, had reached out and said, "Hey, I'm at Rancho Obi-Wan with Don Post Jr." that I thought, "Oh my goodness, I got to talk to this guy." And I never really thought about Ben Cooper and being able to reach out and talk to them, and where do you start? And that's when you sent me an email saying, "Hey, guess who I know?"
Yeah, it really worked out. It was serendipitous, and I think what the guys will tell you is that back in the day when they were it was normal for Ira and Frank just to go to work at the Halloween costume factory every day, and that's what kind of lit my imagination, just thinking how much fun it must have been to be there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Especially in like June.
Yeah, June. I don't know about June. I think June was a little hot for them in Brooklyn.
Yeah, but just being able to think about Halloween and all those fall smells, and I'm sure they had bowls of candy corn everywhere just to get everyone in the mood.
Oh,
yeah, I have no doubt. And I know they, the one thing I wanted to tell you guys, they, at one point, every factory worker, there was like 350 of them. They, behind Ben Cooper's back, they manufactured a Ben Cooper Halloween mask for his
wow.
Do you have one of these?
No, I can't find anyone. There's a picture of him in the People magazine, but they all put it on before Frank came in. So when he came in, there was 350 Ben Coopers staring back at him.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow, that's
amazing.
Yeah, imagine walking into a room and seeing 300 of yourselves.
That's awesome.
It's like Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, right?
Attack of the Coopers. Is there a book or a website documenting all these costumes from beginning to end from the Ben Cooper Company?
So I'm glad you asked, because I'm working with Ira's daughter to try and do that.
Oh.
And we're getting a lot of great submissions from fellow collectors and everything. So we hope to have it up by Halloween. And we got the domain name bencoopercostumes.com. So if people want to check it out, hopefully we'll have a lot of stuff to go through by this Halloween 2017.
Excellent. Well, exciting. And we will make sure to put a link on that in our show notes.
Yeah, and if you need any help with that whatsoever, just reach out and we'll be there. I'll put on my Darth Vader costume and drive myself over.
Thanks, guys. And I'm impressed, Richard, that you still fit into your Darth Vader costume.
Well, truth be told, there was a lot of photoshopping in that. Now, if Skywalkers want to reach out to you and ask you any other questions or just find out about your upcoming book, how can they reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, so we do have an Instagram page, Ben Cooper Costumes, okay. and you can email us at info@bencoopercostumes.com and share your stories of when you were going out in your favorite Ben Cooper costume, or if you have a picture want to share with us, that would be awesome too.
Oh, cool. All right. And you yourself, are you on Twitter or any other social media?
We have our Ben Cooper Costumes Twitter page.
Oh, perfect.
And I actually have my own Twitter is John Jim Miller. So feel free to reach out. And we want to make, this kind of a history project for ourselves. And I think there's a lot of people that would really be intrigued to find out how these guys were the Halloween kings for so long.
Right.
Was there any kind of rivalry between Ben Cooper and Don Post?
Not between those guys, because Don had his own empire with the rubber mask, the full-headed rubber masks.
Right.
But with Ben Cooper and Collegeville and Halco and Topstone and Cesar... Yes, and Bland Sharness was another one. There was huge competition every year. I mean, they really were competitive, and that's why Ben and Nat Cooper, they spent literally every day at the factory because they had those licenses they had to defend for Marvel and DC and Disney and then Star Wars. It was really, really a competitive business.
Wow.
Boy, all I got to say about that is college who? Yeah, no one's talking about them 40 years later. And
That's
I know
right.
Don Post was more for the adults, whereas Ben Cooper was more for
Right.
the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an excellent point, because Ben Cooper very much wanted to tailor it to the kids. That if folks are old enough, they remember Halloween being exclusively for kids. So that's kind of why they couldn't make the change in the early 90s when Halloween kind of shifted to more house parties and adult-oriented, because that wasn't their thing. And they were in their 70s by then, so they kind of figured, well, we had a good run.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
Interesting.
Well, thanks again for getting Ira and Frank on the show, and I'm so honored that we were their very first podcast.
Thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to listen to the podcast on a nice autumn day. That's going to be sweet.
Well, that wraps up episode 189 of
Skywalking Through Neverland.
We'd like to thank Ira Cooper, Frank Romano, John Miller, and, of course, all you Skywalkers who listen every single week. Now, Skywalkers, beyond Halloween, we have some other holidays coming up, like Christmas and the New Year, and we do have some t-shirt designs for you as well. So we have our holiday BB-8 shirt, which features BB-8 and rolling with snowflakes, and he's dressed like Santa. It's like the super cutest thing ever, and I love it. And we have other holiday shirts. So if you want to help support us, please head to Skywalking Through Neverland and go to the Support Us tab, where you can find that link to TeePublic and look for shirts, or you can buy stickers of the same designs. You can buy now, you can get pillows. You can get little throw pillows with these designs on them. It's like so amazing. There's so many things you can get.
And those tapestries. So tomorrow is our anniversary. Guess what I want?
You want a tapestry?
A Skywalking Through Neverland tapestry. Make it happen.
Okay.
And Skywalkers, you make this happen by going over to retrozap.com and listening to some of your other favorite shows like Brews and Blasters,
The Sandcrawler Podcast,
the Deucecast Movie Show.
And now there's also a podcast called Warp Trails that is following the new Star Trek show.
Oh, Discovery?
Yeah, it's Star Trek Discovery. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Also there. And, of course, Talking Apes TV.
Where we just put up our long-awaited special episode where we talk with Dean Preston of the Simian Scroll fanzine. One of many, many Talking Apes TV specials coming your way.
Excellent. And you can also find Skywalking Through Neverland at jedinews.co.uk. Oh, and I want to give a shout out to Dennis Keithley, who, with his wife, they do Warp Trails, the podcast.
Oh, you do it with your wife?
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. So we need to watch more episodes and listen, because we're behind on that show because you have to pay.
Yeah.
So
we ended with episode 1.
yeah. So we're gonna wait till there are more episodes out and then pay for a month.
Then we started watching the Orville and thought it was Discovery.
Yeah.
Our mistake. Our mistake.
But Orville is really good.
All right, so if anyone wants to reach out to us on social media, where do they go?
Well, you can find us. We are at Skywalking Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email us, share@skywalkingthrough-neverland.com. And also join our Facebook group. Get to know not only us, but other Skywalkers who post in there a lot more than us sometimes. So it's really fun. You can make friends, and it's a very friendly, happy group that's very family friendly. It's good.
Very well said.
Okay, and also, if you want to leave us an iTunes or a Stitcher review, we love those. And lately, we've been looking at other country reviews. So if you're in a different country and you've written a review, just let us know. Hit us up, message us or something, and let us know what country to look for, because I'm excited.
All right, now stay tuned for bits of conversation that didn't necessarily fit into the episode. We thought it was worth hearing anyways.
Absolutely, as well as bloopers.
Which there's always plenty of.
Of course. If you're watching our live stream, you know this.
Mm-hmm. Just don't let that get out.
That's true. Okay, so Skywalkers, I want you guys to have fun. doing all of your Halloween decorating and getting ready.
And share it. And share whatever you can.
Yeah.
Share your Halloween costumes, Halloween decorations.
Absolutely.
If you've decorated your house in a Halloween fashion, we want to see everything Halloween.
Yay! So while you're doing that and while you're trick-or-treating, always remember...
Neverland on Alderaan.
Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
Mickey's Halloween party. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Richard was going to wear a trench coat.
Yeah, I was going to be Secret Squirrel.
Yeah. And at the last minute, I think the same day, we decided, no, you're going to be Nick Wilde because it's literally a green...
It's a tan...
short sleeve shirt.
Oh, for Nick Wilde, yeah.
Yeah, and like shorts. So it worked out great.
Yeah.
We found the perfect
I really
shirt.
wanted to be Secret Squirrel at Mickey's Halloween party.
I was Judy
Which
Hopps.
is why I quickly changed my mind.
Yes.
Quickly.
All right.
And then when we talk to him in a little bit, will you be with him again?
I hope to. Yeah. I think, we're real friends now. So I talk to Ira every week, and Frank's, as you'll hear, he's, his hearing's going a little bit. So we write letters back and forth.
Aw. You
But
made a pen pal.
I did. And he's a brilliant artist, and as you'll hear talking to them, it's really inspirational because I guess Frank kind of gave up on doing art for a living by the time that Ben Cooper was looking for an artist. So he was in his 30s when his wife saw the Ben Cooper advertisement for an artist for doing the costumes. So Frank will tell you, it kind of saved his life at that point.
And, of course, all you Skywalkers who listen every single week. Always remember...
that Sarah loves scary films.
I hate them.
Send her some scary GIFs.
No, I don't like it. No, send me foxes and bunnies.
And scary GIFs.
Foxes and bunnies.
GIFs and GIFs. Foxes, bunnies, and scary GIFs for Sarah. Happy Halloween!
Oh. Happy Halloween!
One of those will work.
Okay. Is that it?
That is it.
Everything.